Hey, good day, and welcome to the last of our webinars for 2024, where we cover pretty much everything that we've got on the Patronum platform. We've called this one tool to rule them all. My name is Paul Lees, and I'm the founder and CEO of Besbin Labs, and we're the home of Patronum, the Google Workspace manager. And so in today's webinar, we're going to show you everything that we can do with Patronum: onboarding, offboarding, drive management, Google Space management, and everything in between. So with that, let me get straight into the demonstration. So we're going to start the demonstration off just now. So this is Patronum. As you can see, it looks and feels very googly. We've deliberately done that. We want to make sure that the experience for the Google Workspace administrator is as intuitive as possible. Now you can see in front of you, this is our organizational chart. We use the Google directory in order to create this representation of your organization using the Google Manager attribute that is stored in every user's Google profile. So if you go ahead and populate the Google Manager attribute, Patronum will then create for you and for the rest of your organization this organizational chart where you can browse around different users and you'll be able to see people within your organization. So what we're going to do today, we're going to first of all show you how you can manage your Google Workspace users, and we're going to click on Gareth here. So this is where we can manage the users from an ad hoc day-to-day perspective. So let me just walk you through a few of the options in this top right-hand corner. We've got the password reset option. We've got the ability to rename the account, remove the account. The remove option doesn't follow any of our workflows. This is just a very simple delete option inside Patronum. And then inside the menu, we've got the ability to suspend the account, perform a data transfer, transferring the data from either a Google Workspace, another Google Workspace account, or indeed transfer the data to a Google shared drive. We can move the user from one organizational unit to another. This particular user is hidden, so we can actually show that user. We can set an end date, or we can perform what we call an emergency offboarding process, which runs one of our offboarding workflows, which has been pre-configured so that when we want to quickly remove somebody from our organization, they will follow a predefined process of removing that particular user. Also, the end date attribute is something that we've added to the Google directory. We've also got a start date attribute, but I'll show you those in a little bit more detail when we get into the workflow section. So let's just walk through these tabs inside the Gareth's profile. So in the profile section, we have all the profile related information stored in the Google directory. And we've displayed this in a more business friendly, more HR orientated fashion, where we've got the organizational structure: who does Paul report into, and also who does Gareth report into, and who reports into Gareth. So we've got Gareth's direct reports, as well as people in Gareth's department, so we can jump around from user to user through this particular interface. We can also add custom cards in this section, which will be useful if your organization has additional information that they would wish to share with others inside the organization. And I mention others because end users could log into Patronum where they are presented with a much cut down version of the interface here, where all they can do is see and interact with the users themselves. And if you give them the permission to do so, they can edit certain attributes within their own profile. Okay, so let us just go ahead and edit some of the profile related information here. Now here we are reading the Google directory. We're doing a lot of this information in real time, where we're reading the information directly from the Google directory using the Google APIs. And so here we've got all of the contact information. As I mentioned, we've got a start date and an end date for the particular user. The manager attribute is also available to be configured here. We've also got lots of other additional information that has been added to this particular environment via the custom attributes. We can also add additional custom attributes. And one of the unique things of Patronum is we have the ability to specify who can edit the particular attributes on a user's profile. Is it administrators, or do we want to allow end users to edit specific information within their own profile? Now, this can be quite useful when you're using the Google directory for searching for things such as skills or languages, or even for the individual users to manage their own qualifications. We have some of our customers who use this particular feature to allow their employees to update links such as the Calendly link, and also to specify when they're going to be available. And all those details can then be added either to the card inside of Patronum or pushed to things such as an email signature. Let's just jump through onto the next tab. I won't stay too long in the groups section because it basically does what you would expect. It shows you the Google groups that Gareth is a member of. You can add Gareth to other Google groups, and you can also remove Gareth from any of the Google groups that he has been added to. Inside the calendar section, here we can see all of the calendars that Gareth has added to his Google Calendar view. And we can also interact with these particular calendars. We can add additional people to gain access to the calendar. We can remove people from Gareth's calendars. And we can also grant, through this blue icon in the top corner here, we can grant access to other people's calendars so that Gareth can then manage and interact with those calendars as well. Okay, so inside the contact section, here we've got the ability to see and manage the Google contacts for the particular user. So here we've got the ability to set up contact delegation. We can see here that these three users have access to Gareth's Google contacts. We can edit and manage the contacts themselves, and we've also got a feature inside of Patronum where we can share contact labels from one user to another. This is the manual way of setting up label contact sharing. And what we'll do as part of the demonstration is we're going to show you how you can set up workflows that will automatically provision people so that they can then see additional information from other people's contacts. Okay, jumping through into the file section. Now, in the file section, we have the ability to explore and manage an individual user's Google Drive. I can filter on different types of files by either name, ID. Let's have a look at different types of files. So here we're going to have a look at all of the images and videos inside Gareth's Google Drive. And we'll have the ability to manage those particular files. So let's say I'd like to share those files with other people, maybe modify the access control to those files. We can also change ownership, we can make copies, we can grab the link. All extremely useful, for example, if somebody is away on vacation or they're on long-term sick and you need access to a particular file in order for work to continue inside your organization. Closing through here, we've also got the ability to view and explore the shared drives that Gareth has access to. And so through this section, I can expand the shared drive, and we're then browsing through the Google shared drive that Gareth is currently having access to. And again, we can manage those drives as well. We can share them, get the links, etc. Looking through to the email signature, here we can have a look and manage a particular user's email signature. We can have a look and edit from a direct perspective, or we could go into the HTML itself and have a look at the code behind the email signature in order to maybe help troubleshoot issues, or in fact, take a copy of the code from this email signature and then bring that through into our workflow environment in order to push out a similar email signature to everybody in our organization. In addition to supporting the email signatures for Gareth's primary email address, we can also add and manage email signatures for any other addresses that Gareth can send emails from. Okay, working through to the settings section. So the settings section is quite a large section within inside Patronum, and we cover a lot of the settings within the Gmail side of things. So things such as the vacation response, we can edit, update that. Email labels, we can create, manage, delete, change the color of the Google Gmail labels. We can create and set up email aliases for Gareth. We can specify a different default send as address. We can set up email forwarding. We can create email filters. Those are the rules inside of Gmail. Enable and disable POP and IMAP. And probably one of the most common features that people use in this particular section is the delegate access. And one of the things that we do that's you're unlikely to find in other tools is we show you not only who Gareth has access to, but we also show you who has access to Gareth's account. So we're busy in the background looking at all the users and bringing all this information to provide you with a very useful interface that shows you exactly who has access to whose account. And I can also grant access to other people's accounts, and I can give Gareth access to other people's accounts as well. So we can do things bi-directionally from one interface. Just lastly, before we jump into the next section, we've got the security and then the mobile section. So inside the security section, we've got the ability to view, delete, disable the two-step verification backup codes, any of the apps specific passwords that have been created. We can clear or reset or edit the email and telephone recovery details. We can see which applications Gareth has used his Google Workspace account to authenticate against. We can manage those, we can view those, we can remove them, etc. And we can also see when the last time Gareth logged in, and we can clear Gareth's connections on all devices to the Google Workspace environment. And then lastly, in the mobile section, we give you the ability to view the mobile devices that Gareth has been using. You can wipe those devices, you can block those devices, you could also delete those devices from the Google directory. Inside the licensing section, here we can show you all the license types that are available, as well as which licenses have been applied to Gareth's account, and you can also modify those licenses if you have the ability to do so based on your license allocation. In the roles section, we can show you the Google Workspace admin console roles that have been applied to the user. Patronum actually uses these roles from an administrative perspective. So any super admins that are inside your Google Workspace environment, they will be super admins inside of Patronum. Any help desk users will have that level of access inside of Patronum as well. You can also create custom roles inside of Patronum through the roles section over here on the left. You may want to create a role for things such as email signature management, where you can delegate that to, let's say, the marketing team in order to allow them to update and push out new email signatures for the rest of the organization. In our backup section, this is where, if you have purchased our separate backup solution, you can integrate the two products together and you can create and perform backups. You can perform recoveries of your Google Drive, shared drives, email, calendars, contacts, Google Chats, all the things inside the Google Workspace, including the Google directory. They're all backed up by our backup solution, and you can integrate the two products so that you can manage the backup through the Patronum management interface while leaving the backup solution to just run on its own. It helps from a security perspective that you don't have to necessarily give too much access to the backup solution. And then inside the spaces section, we show you which spaces the user is a member of, and then we can also manage those particular spaces, remove users, add them to additional spaces, etc. Okay, so with that, I'm going to jump into the policy section of our demonstration. So this is where everything that I've just done with Gareth can then be automated. You can create a policy by clicking on the Add Policy button. You can provide it with a name, provide a description, but I've got quite a few here. So let's just pick one that we can then just walk through and talk about how you can configure a policy. So you'll notice here that all of the tabs that we've got, they're the same tabs that we've just walked through with Gareth, except we now have this workflow tab. So the workflow tab defines the who. Who am I interested in targeting with the particular settings that we're going to configure in this policy? And we define that by these two sections here. So inside the conditions section, we can define which cohort of users we are looking to address. Is it based on organizational units? Do I want to exclude organizational units? Do I want to apply these things to a Google group, exclude particular Google groups, etc.? You can have multiples of these, and you can get quite complicated with excluding and including different user groups inside the Google directory. But for this example, I'm just going to say all users inside our Google directory. We can then narrow that down even further through this filter process. And we can filter on anything from the status of a particular user. Maybe it's the backup status that we're interested in, the login status, the last time somebody logged in, all the way through to the attributes of a particular user, including the custom attributes of the user. So we cover all the attributes and statuses that are stored inside the Google directory. And so you can then create a very powerful workflow environment where we can define, as we've got in this example, everybody who's got a job title that contains the word manager. Inside anything that is department contains marketing. So effectively, we're looking for all of the marketing managers. We're then going to say anybody that is an admin. So we've then got using the or option. So we're using a few ands and ors to then create a cohort of users that this particular policy will apply to. So I'm just going to preview this so we can just see which users are going to be affected. And so we've got these 5 users that have been identified to match our particular criteria. Now, Patronum runs every hour. So once this particular policy has been saved and activated, we will look at the Google directory. We'll see which users match this particular policy, and then we'll start to apply the settings from the policy to these users. So that means if any new user joins your organization, they'll be immediately affected by the policy, or at least within the hour they will be affected. If things change, maybe the job titles or departments change, we will also affect the users. And again, I'll talk more about towards that as we walk through the tabs. So in the profile section of the interface, here we can add additional profile related information to the user. We can also potentially remove information as well as add the information. So again, if I just click on the pencil icon here, we can add information through the add option. We can add additional information. We can give everybody a manager. We can also remove specific information from these users as well. In the Google Group section, this is where our group functionality becomes a little bit more interesting. If you add a Google group to a policy, Patronum will take on the responsibility of managing the membership of that particular Google group. What that means is the policy will identify, in this example, we've got 5 users. Those 5 users will be added to the groups that are listed here. If somebody went ahead and manually added a user to that Google group and they do not adhere to the policy, well, we're going to remove that user from the Google group. And that's done by design because, as you very well know, groups typically get used for distributing important information from an email distribution perspective, as well as sharing information inside the organization. And you don't necessarily want the wrong people to be in some of your Google groups. So again, with Patronum, you can rest assured that your group membership will always be accurate because it's being driven and enforced by the policy. We've also got examples here where we're using the attributes from the Google directory to dynamically create and populate the Google groups. So let's say if I had a policy which was for everybody in the organization and I just used the macro here of department, well, what would happen is Patronum would have a look at the department attributes of all the users that were being affected by the policy. It would then go ahead and create Google groups based on those departmental titles and then automatically populate those Google groups. And you can build quite complicated email groups, descriptions, using any attribute inside the Google directory, including the custom attributes that you may add to the Google schema. Now, the calendaring section distributes calendars to the people from the policy. So maybe you want to distribute a public holiday calendar. A typical use case is the company holiday calendar. And again, just like the groups, we make sure that the correct people have access to those Google calendars. We can also distribute the actual users' calendars that are being affected by this particular policy. And so in this example, we're taking the user's calendar and we're giving it access, or we're giving access to their manager. So again, looking specifically at each user and taking the information from the Google directory in order to specifically share calendar information with the appropriate people. We can also grab the manager's calendar and share that back to the user if that was a use case that you wanted to apply. Think of the scenarios of having personal assistants where the personal assistant would like access to the manager's calendar. That can all be done automatically. The contact section is probably one of the most widely used features inside of Patronum. And that's because we've got 3 specific options inside the area. So the first one is what we call directory contacts. And what we do is we read the Google directory. We take the contact information from the Google directory and we store it and label it. So let's say company contacts. So we're going to create a label called company contacts and we're going to give that to all the users from this particular policy. And we're going to take the contact information from the directory and then add that to the label. Now, the knock-on effect of that is that you will then have those contacts available on your mobile device. And so what that means is when somebody calls you from a known number that is stored in the Google directory, it will appear on your device. You'll know exactly who's calling you. No longer will you just see a mobile device number on your phone and then decide to cut them off. You can also, through the advanced filter, specifically target which users you would like to add to which specific label, and you can have multiples of this. So you could have each department could have its own label, and you could share the departments independently via different policies. So again, I could grab the department attribute, I could say it contains a particular word, etc. The same applies for the domain contacts. Now, inside Google, there are a number of contact related sections. The Google domain shared contacts, as Google calls them, we've just decided to call them domain contacts for it just makes it easier to say, is a separate database inside of Google that appears when you type somebody's name inside things like Gmail, etc. And again, you can take those contact details and push those down to individual users' mobile devices. And then the last option is where we can grab a label from somebody else's Google contacts. Let's say we'll have the hot leads contacts label, and all the contacts from this particular label will then be automatically pushed to the users that are in this particular policy. Okay, so going through into the file section. In the file section, we have the ability to grab files, folders, create files, create folders from a shared drive and create a shortcut inside a user's Google Drive. If I right click here, we can make a copy of a particular file. We can create a folder structure within a specific user's drive. And again, these can all automatically then be created so that when somebody joins your organization, you can set up a specific way in which you would like them to work with shared folders as shortcuts in their Google Drive, folders already pre-created, files added to their drive, maybe forms that they need to fill in, etc. Okay, going through into the email signature section, again, a very, very popular feature. As mentioned, we can do anything from the primary email address, you can create any brand names that you wish, and any role-based emails can also be added. And so here we've got a template, and where you would have the first name, the last name, the job title, telephone details, etc. You would just put the attributes that are available through the drop downs. And as you can see, there's quite an extensive list of drop downs and options available in the drop down, in addition to the additional schema extensions that are available. We can also click on the source code and have a look at the code itself. Again, I prefer to edit the templates via the HTML. Just makes it a little bit easier to be absolutely precise on creating the best version of an email signature. We also have the option to have or include custom conditional statements. And what I mean by that is, maybe let's have a look at this one. Maybe we don't want the telephone icon to be displayed if the user doesn't have a telephone. So we've wrapped that particular statement in a conditional statement here. I can preview and see what that looks like. So here we've got Gareth. I know that Gareth's got a telephone, so his details will be displayed along with that particular icon. However, if I look at Kyla here, she doesn't have a telephone, and so she's not going to be given the telephone icon and a blank line because we've wrapped that information in a conditional statement. Okay, just going to jump through and just quickly cover off the settings section because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. But inside the settings section, you can update, create a vacation response, create labels for people. Let's just expand the aliases section. Here, we've created a number of send as aliases because inside this particular system, we've got different brands. And so we've got the email address at brand A and the email address at brand B. That has then allowed us to then create specific email signatures for these particular users. They've also got a role-based senders address. And again, we could have gone back to the email signature section and created another email signature specifically for sending as the sales at email address. We can create filters for people. We can enable, disable pop and IMAP, set up delegate access, etc. Looking through to the licensing, if you have the ability to have multiple license types, you can decide based on the job role what types of licenses you would like to give to those particular users. This is going to become more and more relevant as people start to roll out Gemini, where you might not want to roll out the full version of Gemini to everybody, but specifically allocate different types of Gemini to different users. Maybe you want to just send the AI meeting and messaging version to people in the marketing and the sales teams, whereas people from a enterprise perspective may want to have the enterprise version of Gemini. In the roles section, you can add people to different roles inside the Google admin console. You might also want to do that with Google Group, where we can manage the group membership automatically as well. From a backup perspective, we can allocate a backup routine to the users automatically, so you can decide what types of backup you would like to perform to which specific users. Again, that might be useful if you want to be more conscious of how much storage you're utilizing from a backup perspective. And then finally, in the spaces section, you could automatically add particular users to Google Chat Spaces. And we found this here, even internally, extremely useful, where we've made sure everybody is in our all hands communication group, because a few people had just joined and they weren't being added to the particular chat spaces. So again, by adding this particular feature, it's really helped communication inside the organization. Okay, so I'm just going to click out of that and just kind of recap. So you've just seen us talk about the onboarding process using a policy where we can add people to Google Groups, give them files, calendars, etc. But what happens when somebody leaves your organization? Well, that's where Patronum can also help through an offboarding policy. And again, it's exactly the same approach. It's a policy. It has to have a trigger in order to run. Now, the triggers can be however or whatever works for your organization. So we have a number of customers that follow this particular process, and different customers do different things. Some organizations will simply move the user to a different organizational unit. Once they've dropped into that OU, the policy will then automatically trigger. Others will use our end date attribute, and we can say end date has expired, or X number of days after the end date if you want to do things in a staged way, X number of days before the end date, etc. We can also, through our actions section, set up approval processes so that when somebody is scheduled to be offboarded, we can send their manager an email that basically says, Paul's leaving the organization, is that correct? Because sometimes it's the wrong Paul, and HR or IT have got the wrong person's details and they've accidentally set them off on the route of deprovisioning, which isn't really something that you would want to happen. The manager can then decide whether or not to approve that process or cancel it. They can also, through the override option here, decide where specific resources will be allocated. So the policy, and we're going to walk through the policy in a moment, but the policy will define and decide where particular resources will be reallocated. And the manager, during the approval process, can specify and override those particular options. We can also drop the different users an email where we can notify people, send them an email, use an email template in order to notify that a particular action is being performed. But once you've outlined how you're going to identify the users that are going to be offboarded, again, you just simply walk through each of the tabs and then decide and define what will happen in each section. So in the profile section, we've got the ability to remove and strip off the information within the Google directory, even removing the photo from the user's profile. Again, this is really useful from a GDPR perspective, where you want to remove any personal identifiable information from your system as part of the offboarding process. From a Google Groups environment, you can transfer any groups that the particular user was an owner of. You can also remove the user from any Google Groups. In the calendar section, again, any of the deprovisioning options, they're here under the smaller deprovisioning icon. Inside the calendar section, we've got a number of options. The top one is probably my favorite, which is to remove the user who is leaving the organization from any appointments that they have been sent. This effectively cleans up the appointments inside the organization and removes the user that would still potentially be in those appointments if they were deleted. You can transfer the user's calendars to somebody else. In this example, we've identified that to be the manager. Or you can just delete the events, delete the future events. You can transfer any secondary calendars over to that person. And you can also remove the individual from any calendars that they have been shared on. From a contacts perspective, again, clicking on the smaller icon there, if you've got contact label sharing set up, we can transfer the ownership and the sharing of that to somebody else. We can also transfer those contacts themselves to the manager. We can set up contact delegation if that was something that you would prefer to do. And we can also go through the Google directory and have a look at everybody's Google contacts and remove that individual user from everybody's Google contacts. And the reason why we find that particularly useful is, for some reason, if we're emailing people internally, over time those individuals will be forced into our Google contacts. Once that account has been deleted, those contacts may still reside in our Google contacts, never to be removed. Patronum cleans all that up and makes sure that those old contacts are removed from the organization. In fact, I should also point out that if you have our directory sync running, any users that are no longer valid inside the Google directory, they're automatically removed as part of that particular process. Now, in the files area, this is where, again, Patronum comes into its own, where we can transfer data from one source to another. So let's have a look at some of the options that we've got. First of all, we can decide that we want to transfer the file or the drive data. We can decide where we're going to transfer that data to. Is it to a shared drive or is it to a particular user? So let's say I'm going to transfer this to a specific user. We'll transfer it through to the manager. We're going to create a path based on particular attributes that are in the Google directory. We're going to have first name, last names, files, and then we can decide on the privacy level of those particular files. Do I want to take the leavers files in their entirety and move them over to the manager? Do I want to just take the shared files or the unshared files? And so what we're seeing quite a lot of is people wanting to transfer any files that have been unshared to the manager, because those are potentially private files or files that are confidential, and it's more applicable for the manager to take responsibility of reviewing those and then making a decision on what to do. Now, we could also transfer those through to a particular shared drive. And again, maybe I want to specify that it's just the shared files that we are transferring through to the shared drive. And so I could create a shared drive that is just for my users or ex-users data, and that data can then be moved to a shared drive and then continue to be accessed and shared with the users that already have access to those particular files. We also give you the option to transfer any Looker Studio data, as well as request access to any external files. And again, this is a really unique feature to Patronum, where what we're doing is contacting external organizations that the lever has been collaborating with. And so let's say we've got an organization that we've been collaborating with, and the lever's been collaborating and has received a number of files from the external organization and been working on them together. What Patronum will do is it will give the manager access to those files so that the manager can then continue to work on those files or provide access to colleagues inside the organization. If the user doesn't have it doesn't have edit access to those files, what Patronum will do is it will email the end user at the external organization and say that Paul's leaving the organization, and could you please share a particular list of files with Paul's manager and provide Paul's manager's details. We can also remove any external access to the lever's files, as well as remove any access the lever has to any internally shared files. So again, you can see that we've got a very, very comprehensive set of options when it comes to offboarding from a file perspective. You may want to create a vacation response temporarily for the user. You might want to set up delegate access, so we can grant delegate access to the manager so they can gain access to the user's inbox temporarily. We could also grant access to delegates that the lever had delegate access to, or we could remove those from the system completely. Now, one of the things that you obviously want to do when somebody's offboarded is make sure that they are done so securely. And so that's where the security section comes into play. Here we can delete the two-step verification backup codes. Any application-specific passwords will be removed. We can change the user's password. We'll make sure that the email and telephone recovery details have been wiped. We can remove any applications that are connected to the particular account. We can force the user to be signed out. We could hide the user from the Google directory so that they're no longer available in the type ahead of Gmail and Docs, etc. We can move the user to another organizational unit. And again, this is a very common approach where customers can start the leaving process in one organizational unit and then move it to another organizational unit and then have another policy that can run X number of days later that can maybe archive the account, transfer files, delete the account, etc. So you can have a multi-stage process by moving the user through different layers in your Google directory organizational structure. We give you the ability to rename the account, and here's an example where we've just said lever dot, and then we've taken the user's email address, username. If you wanted to anonymize that particular address, you could use the user ID. And so you're completely removing any trace of the user from your system. If you do rename an account, you get the ability to then take their email alias and assign it to another user. You could also, if you wish, assign that email address to a Google group, or as we've got here, we're going to create a Google group using the lever's email address as the Google group name. We're going to add the manager as the manager of that Google group, and maybe even apply a label to the manager's email so that if any emails arrive into their environment, they'll be labeled up so that they can clearly see the emails have arrived to a particular alias and they're not being addressed to them. Now, one of the things that you would want to do later on in the process is potentially remove all of those automatically assigned aliases from the users. And again, we provide the options to do so, which is a good thing, again, from a GDPR perspective, where we're trying to have a minimal amount of personal identifiable information related to people that have left the organization. By the end of the offboarding process, we want to have zero information related to that particular individual inside our Google environment. We can suspend the user if we wish. We can delete the user. You can also use the policies to reactivate particular users if you've automatically suspended them. And then lastly, in this particular section, we've got the ability to wipe the device, remove the user's account details from the device. We can block the device, and we can also remove the mobile device from the Google system. Now, depending on the version of Google Workspace you have, these two options may actually perform the same task. In the lower versions of Google Workspace, Google Basic, wipe device and remove account from device actually wipes the device. So just to be mindful of that when you are selecting these particular options. If you're on Business Plus, Business, Enterprise, then they will indeed do exactly what they say. Okay, so from a licensing perspective, as you would expect, you can apply different license types. We have customers that apply archive user licensing. We have other customers that will allocate a free cloud identity license, remove the license that they've had with Google Workspace. So they're keeping the account for a period of time, etc. From a roles point of view, we can remove the user from any of the Google roles that they've been allocated. Looking at the backups, we can force a backup to be run on the account. So again, if you are wanting to have one last backup of the account before it is suspended, you can initiate that through a policy. And in the spaces, we can also remove the user from any Google spaces that they have been assigned to, as well as transfer ownership of any spaces that they are a manager of. Okay, so that's covering all of the onboarding and offboarding, but the policies are also quite powerful when it comes to just reporting. So here's an example of one that we've created to just perform a report. Again, we're looking at the workflow section. We've identified the type of users that we're interested in. So we're looking for users that have been suspended or users that have been haven't logged in for 60 days. And what we're going to do is we're going to set that up on a schedule. So this was set up back in January, and it's going to run every Friday, and it's only going to run the once. Whereas normally our policies will be running on an hourly basis. We can configure a policy to just be a one-off policy that runs, and then we'll send the report, which is the output from the policy, to this particular account, and you can have multiples of that. So basically, every Friday, Paul gets a report on all the users that haven't logged in for the past 60 days. And so again, you can see how via a policy, you can create very, very powerful reporting mechanisms that will help trigger and define how you can manage your particular users, address anything from rolling out two-step verification, looking at people that haven't logged in, even looking at which users are in which department. We have a hotel chain, and they charge each of the hotels based on the number of users that they've got in each of the locations. And those locations are then defined by organizational units. And so you can run a report for each OU and then send those reports off to the managers at each of the particular locations, just to say, these are the people that we identify inside your organization. Then you can have a conversation if there are too many or too few. Okay, so we're going to leave the policy section and we're going to just go into some of the other areas that we have got inside Patronum. So inside the calendar section, here, as you would expect, we're going to do some management of calendars. We've got the ability to view, manage the calendar resources. We've got the ability to search for any particular calendars. So let's look for company calendar. So that will then find the company calendar. I can click on the company calendar and we can then add and manage the permissions of that particular calendar. Likewise, with the events, we can say, looking for a particular event. And here's all the events that we've got. And we can have a look at the event and then manage the particular attributes of that specific event. We could also search for other information such as the attendees, any events that have a particular calendar ID, or any events that have been orphaned where they don't have a particular owner but they are still inside the system. We can go and find those particular events for you, and then you can manage those events inside the Patronum interface. The Google Spaces section, as you would imagine, that's where you can view and manage all of your Google Spaces. We can see how many members are in there. We can click on a particular Google Space. We can have a look at the members. We can add other people as members, remove members, etc. So again, it's just a manual management interface of the Google Spaces. Inside the contact section, well, this is where you are able to import, edit, and manage the Google domain shared contacts. We've also got the Google Contact section. This is a pooled area where we are pooling everybody's Google contacts. And so from here, you can search every single user's Google contacts to identify and locate specific contacts related to a particular user. So let's say you've had a request to be deleted or a request to be forgotten by an external entity. You could use Patronum here to search for that individual user to make sure that none of your team or none of your organization has that individual's contact details inside their Google contacts. And then lastly, inside the contact sharing, this is where we will display all of the contact sharing configuration that you may have created through a policy or manually through the Patronum interface. As we can see here, these are all the labels that are being synchronized, and we've also got a number of directory syncs that are currently running. We can expand these and we can see the users that have been added to these particular labels and the last time they were synchronized, or the last time there was a need to synchronize and update those particular labels on the other users. Okay, dropping down into the drive section. So inside the drive section, we've got the ability to view all of the shared drives inside the Google environment. Any shared drive that your users can see, we will pool all of those together and then display them inside Patronum so that you can manage those shared drives. You could also specifically look for internal versus external shared drives. And this is really important because if your users receive a shared drive from an external organization, when they move files into that shared drive, those files are lost to your organization and they belong to the external source. So if you had a rogue employee who was looking to steal data, the easiest way for them to do it would be to set up a Google Workspace environment, create a shared drive, share it with their business account, and then just drag and drop everything. You would it would be highly unlikely that you would identify or find that without Patronum. And again, I'll show you later on how you can get alerts if those kind of things happen. Inside the file sharing section, here we're going to show you who has access to your Google Workspace data. Now, we've done specific videos on this topic, and I encourage you to have a look at those because we go into a lot of detail about the particular feature. But here we've got the ability to filter on different types. Maybe I'm looking for users who are external to our organization. Maybe I'm looking for just my files, looking for files that belong to a particular user. But I'm just going to click on external users. So we're now going to look specifically at all users outside my organization and the files that they have access to. So here I can see Paul, he's got access to 16 files. He's got write access to those files, so it might be a bit of a risk. I can have a look at those files, and I can see that they're all just images, and they're being shared by the administrator. If I want to, I can unshare all of those files from Paul. If we go to the end here, we've got the padlock icon. I can change the permissions that Paul's got access to those particular files. So let's say I would prefer Paul to be just a viewer of all of those files, and I can save that, and that will then change Paul's access on those files to be just a viewer. One of the other options that we've got is we could download the list of files to a CSV and interrogate that list, because in the real world environment, you very rarely find low numbers when it comes to files that external individuals have access to. It's typically in the thousands, especially when you're collaborating with organizations over a long period of time and from multiple sources inside the organization. So downloading the list of files, importing them into a spreadsheet gives you a great way of interrogating that data. Not only that, you can take that particular file, modify it, and then upload it back to the system through the import user CSV. And we will remove the files that you have specified to be removed, or we will remove the permissions from the files that you have specified us to remove. So you can be very, very accurate and laser focused when it comes to which files you want to unshare from particular users. You don't have to use a broad brush to do that. You can also select multiple users in this particular interface. You can download the list of users. You could also download the files that are being shared with all of those users. So you could have one spreadsheet that you could then have a look at for all access outside the organization. Or you could unshare the files that are currently shared with these particular users. And then finally, in the search section, here we've got the ability to search for any file based on the file name, file ID, owner, last modified, all the way through to the trash folder. Historically, it was possible to have multiple parents inside Google Workspace. Now it's not feasible to do that, but you might still be able to find those through our interface. Useful if you're looking to do a migration project and the migration tools don't find those things, and eventually they'll cause you particular problems when you're trying to move files from one system to another. So I can find the files. Let's just type the word Paul. And again, we can share those files. We can get the link, change the ownership, etc. One of the more common use cases for this option is file ID, where you've been sent an email, you've got the link, and when you click on the link, the computer says no, you don't have access to that particular file, or the users don't have access. You can come into Patronum, put in the file ID and locate, and then decide what you want to do with that particular file. Okay, so let's just jump into the dashboard section now. So in the dashboard, we give you the ability to, first of all, subscribe to Patronum. Click on the subscribe option. We'll read the Google directory and we'll charge based on your user count. The product is $8 per user per year for Google Workspace accounts. If you have any archive users, that's $2 per user per year. And also if you have any frontline workers, that's also $2 per user per year. Inside the dashboard, we'll give you an overview of the users, the files that you're sharing internally, externally. We don't have any shared drives that are local to this environment, so we've got no data there. But then we can expand and we can see which files are being shared the most, who's sharing the most data, what files are being shared the most, and also which domains we are sharing those particular files with. We also have our alerts environment where we can configure pre-configured alerts. We can subscribe to those alerts. We can get notified about those alerts. We can configure those alerts to be emailed to particular groups, particular individuals. And so here we can see that we've got alerts for drive management, what maybe you're interested in when drives hit a particular volume. Maybe you're backing that particular drive up and you don't want to exceed a certain amount of size because of costs from a backup perspective, etc. There is obviously a limit on the number of items that you have inside a shared drive. And so with Patronum, you can give or get early warnings when you are hitting that. We've got things such as identifying which users have email aliases that aren't based on their actual name. So you may want to have a quick look to see what those are. Which users have not logged in the last 30 days. Which users have got delegate access, which is quite a neat little feature where you can see a list of all the users and you can see when and who has access to those particular accounts, and you get that in a nice, easy to read list. You can export those, and then you can maybe query why people have particular access. If you're looking to roll out email signatures, it's quite useful to see who doesn't have a telephone number, who doesn't have a mobile, etc. One of the things that we've added in Patronum is the ability to easily update this information. So I can see here that people don't have work numbers, and I can just type these into the interface and update those, and it will update the Google directory immediately for all of those particular users. I don't have to keep jumping in and out of different accounts to do that. We can see who's got IMAP enabled, who's forwarding their emails externally, who's forwarding their emails internally, which users have access to shared drives. And so, as I mentioned before, receiving a shared drive from an external organization can be quite dangerous. And so you could subscribe to this particular alert and you'll be notified the moment somebody is shared on a particular shared drive. Likewise, we can see if your users are storing their data in shared drives, and we can also see which users don't have two-step verification enabled. Staying in the dashboard for a moment, one of the things that we have inside Patronum is we have an approval process. So if you perform tasks that affect a number of files or a number of users or a lot of policies, such as a delete operation, we will ask you to approve that particular request. One of the things that we don't want you to do is accidentally click a button and then regret the actions that are then being performed. So we've put safety mechanisms in place in order to prevent that. Anything from policies being deleted en masse, users being deleted en masse, policies running against users en masse. So if a policy is configured and it's going to affect 80% or more of that particular user type, again, we will just notify you to say this policy just needs to be approved, just to make sure that you understand what you've done um, and then you can then approve or reject that particular option. And then inside the live task area, that's where you'll be able to see some of the operations that Patronum is performing in the background, such as file unsharing, um, uh, and other similar tasks. And you can click on the task itself and you can see the actual logs going through step by step. Speaking of logs, we've got a logging environment here through the notifications section. Uh, as you saw when we were we were browsing individual users' files, you can see that we log the fact that we browse. So here we can see that my account was browsing Gareth's files. Again, everything that we're doing, our aim is to be super transparent when it comes to everything that Patronum is doing. So everything is being logged. Even simple things such as browsing a particular user's files, those actions are also logged inside the system. Speaking of logs, if I go to the settings section and I go to integrations, I can integrate our logging environment with products such as BigQuery or Splunk. We can also integrate Patronum with the backup solution. We have user templates where we can configure templates such as a new user process. If I click on the new user template, inside the new user template, when we create a user inside Patronum, we can define what information is mandatory, how we would like our email addresses to be formatted. So here we've got first initial dot last name as our email standard. And we're also saying that job title, the manager attributes, the department, the email and telephone recovery details, they're all mandatory. In addition to that, we can also decide what kind of licenses I'd like to apply to a particular user, as well as what types of emails I would like to send when I create a particular user. Now, you can do this kind of thing through a policy, or you could do it at the moment of creating the account. And so here, when an account is created, we're going to send a welcome email to the user's email recovery address. So that will be their personal email address. And they'll just get an email that says, welcome on board, we've created you an account and these are the credentials. We could also send an email to the user themselves. So when they arrive in the organization, they'll have an email ready and waiting for them inside the organization, inside their Gmail. And we can also send an email to the manager to say there's a new person starting, please arrange desks, etc. Now you could, again, as I mentioned, you could do that through a policy as well. Using the start date attribute, you could define the emails to be sent before or way before the person arrives, the day the person arrives, and then a couple of days after they've arrived to then follow up with maybe meeting appointments, etc. And that is everything. As I mentioned, we've got roles inside the Google system. So you can define different types of roles, maybe an email signature role, etc. But that's Patronum. As you can see, it's a very comprehensive tool. We've got a lot of things that we're adding next year. And if you've been watching some of our file-based webinars, we'll have shown you or give you a sneak peek of what's coming very, very soon to our file-based policies. So with that, I'm just going to jump back to the presentation. Yeah. So as I mentioned, Patronum has got a lot of stuff in it, and customers may not use every single feature. We've got user onboarding, offboarding. We've got email signatures. We can synchronize the Google directory to a mobile device. We've got Drive compliance from a sharing perspective. We've got the ability to create Google groups. We've got the ability to manage spaces, calendars. More is coming. A lot more is coming. There's some very, very interesting developments that we're currently working on. Okay, so appreciate your time this afternoon and this evening. All I can request is that if you're interested in Patronum, there is a free trial available. It's 30 days, which is the longest free trial available in the market for this kind of product. All I ask you to do is go to the website, either patronum.io or besbinlabs.com, install the product through the Google Marketplace, join the free trial, give it a go. And if you want to have a meeting with either myself or one of my colleagues, schedule a meeting via the Besbin Labs website, and we can have a talk about what you would like to do with Patronum. So with that, appreciate your time, and thank you very much.